Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Education Subcommittee meeting today. And today we have two bills in front of us. The first is we're going to take up House Bill 1322, which is the virtual education bill. And we're going to discuss this today, go through it for the first time, and take any questions. We'll go section by section, Alistair. 1370. Okay. 1376, excuse me. Yeah, 1376. Sorry about that. Not 1322. 1376. And we'll go section by section, Alistair, and see if anybody has any questions, and we'll do it that way. Is that cool with everyone? Great. And we're not moving this bill today. It is a pretty big bill, so I wanted to make sure that we had a discussion on a Saturday morning, but it's not a Saturday morning, just pretend it's a Tuesday. All right, cool. Thanks, Alistair. Go ahead. Want to tell us what this does first and then go through section by section?
Yes, absolutely. So this bill does several different things. I think this bill is kind of an omnibus bill that is, sorry about that, largely focused on reforming the way that virtual education is done in the state, creating a framework so that when there's a transitional period in which virtual education has to be given to students like we've seen over the past year, setting some guardrails up so that the process can work a little bit more smoothly than it has, and also taking a few of the lessons learned from virtual education and applying them to educational things in the future. There's a couple of pilot programs in here, and we'll get to those. So the first section of the bill on page 4 of the reprint that I sent you guys is requirements that must be part of teacher preparatory programs for correct pedagogical methods of teaching in virtual education. And if you remember, we had a subcommittee briefing back in, I think, November of last year on this topic. It was actually a very big subcommittee meeting. We met on this topic. We met on the topic of equity during virtual education, and we also received some public commentary. And part of that presentation led to this section, which requires that teachers use optimal methods when teaching in virtual education. So as this list of methods on page 4, they must provide opportunities for interactive instructions, deliver targeted and rigorous, racially aware and culturally responsive instruction, provide opportunities for student-regulated, personalized learning, alternate high and low intensity activities, use digital tools to create opportunities for student collaboration, and incorporate opportunities to promote student reflection.
Let's stop there.
Sure.
Yeah, see if there's any questions about the teacher training. This was a recommendation from one of the professors at the University of Maryland and of their education program there. And I think we're going to beef up the language, if you haven't done it yet, Alistair, on Roman numeral number 4 on that page, delivering targeted and rigorous, racially aware and culturally responsive instruction. I don't have the reprint yet. I know you've done it, but I just haven't printed it off yet. Sam, if you get that to me. But we're going to beat that section up, right?
Yes. I have not personally beefed it up in this reprint, but in the future I will.
Got it. Delegate Ebersol.
I'm gonna pull a no question one. This is a great section. There's nothing really that requires us to train teachers in this, and teachers really had to pivot very quickly on their own guile. And so having this in here and having this training will be very important to them going forward. Thank you.
And yeah, now just repeat that this came from a teacher preparation program.
Right. Right.
So cool. All right, let's go to the next section. Any advocates have any questions on this section? Seeing none. Thank you. Next.
Okay, so the next section involves a pilot program for the Flip of the Classroom pilot program. This is to be administered by MSDE, and MSD will award grants to individual public schools who elect to have teachers participate in the pilot program. Preference will be given to teachers who work in schools who are eligible for concentration of poverty grants in the same fiscal year in which the grants are awarded under Section 5233, who work in schools that reflect the geographic diversity of the state and are from groups that are, and the teachers are from groups that are historically underrepresented in the teaching profession. A teacher who is selected to participate shall receive help from the county board in professional development in how to do virtual education, which will be done in accordance with the guidelines we discussed in the previous section. A teacher who is selected to participate in the program is permitted to reduce other duties in the school and reasonable to compensate for the particular increase teaching load that operating this pilot program will cause. And assessment of students without a significant interruption to instruction should occur for this pilot program. The pilot program will run from 2023 to 2025 with fiscal years 2023 to 2025. So that's school years 2022, 2023, 2023, 2024, and 2024, 2025. There'll be an appropriation of $250,000 for the pilot program, which according to the fiscal note should fund about 250 pilot programs. It might be a little bit less, but hopefully something in that range. And MSD must report on the outcome of these pilot programs in the last year of the program. And I'm sorry, I didn't explain what Flip the Classroom is. A method by which the teachers record lectures at home, give them to students to watch as homework, and then in the classroom time, spend instruction time collaborating with the students on using the instructions, collaborating, helping students engage with each other to in peer-to-peer engagement to synthesize the instruction. So that is this program.
Great. Section complete. Perfect. Thank you. Any questions on this? Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this would be eligible for teachers at any grade level. Is that correct? Would there be any willingness maybe to limit this to middle and high school?
Sure.
When my son's in kindergarten, and sorry, I just occurred to me since I spoke to you this morning, Mr. Chair, and I'm like, elementary school students actually, watching the lectures, but I could see great value in more advanced coursework as the kids get older.
Yeah, absolutely. And just be mindful that this is it is a program, right? And kids and teachers will have to apply for it, or the school system will have to apply for it. But yeah, there's room for us to limit it to middle school and secondary, post-secondary education in middle school. Well, secondary education, excuse me, in middle school. Ebersol.
That's a good suggestion, but actually, I think Delegate Guyton will back me up that this might be very valuable to the special needs community. Because of the ability to, move through a lesson at a pace that is comfortable for them, and this for elementary as well. Sometimes their learning is at a different pace and time, sometimes faster, but often they need more time. And this program, that's the huge advantage of this if we do it, that they can stop and back up and repeat. And I'm not sure it's limited to middle and secondary ed.
Actually, that's a good point. I'd be willing to leave it open then, given that. Thank you.
It'll be chosen, and again, I think it'll be chosen by the school, right? But Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't want to monopolize the meeting. I did send a pretty substantial list of concerns over this bill to the chair and to some others on the committee. I would love to work on it. I have done this work for a lot of years and also worked on work groups at MSDE on virtual learning. And I'm also a developmental brain scientist. So I would like for the work that we put into this bill be based on data. And that's really important to me. I feel like we had an unplanned, uncontrolled, huge statewide, countrywide experiment in virtual learning this year, but we don't have the data on that. So I have a lot of concerns about a bill that is this large. I won't go over all of my concerns with that, but one of my suggestions was to limit it to older kids because I do have some concerns about how this would apply to those in disabilities community, but also to our youngest kids whose brain development is just not developmentally appropriate for them to learn this way. So that's my suggestion. I'm happy to discuss it more, but as I told the chair, I don't want to monopolize this meeting because I did have a whole lot of suggestions, but I'm hoping that there's a way that we can make this bill work for everyone. So thank you.
All right. Now, Delegate Guyton, are you suggesting to Delegate Polakovich-Carr's point that you're suggesting that we limited this pilot program to high schoolers?
I recognize I sent notes to you late, Mr. Chair, so I apologize for that, and you probably haven't had a chance to read them. My concern really has to do with the entire bill, particularly any permanent schools that go into place, that they are actually for the older kids and not for the younger kids. But, again, we can discuss that, and, I'm happy to have discussions offline on why I feel very strongly about that. But yeah, definitely for the Flip the Classroom program as well.
Okay, great. All right, so look, let me just, like I said the other night, right? Everybody just take a step back and just breathe. We're not moving the bill today. And I know there are some concerns. The bill as written was not my intention, as I said during the public hearing. There are some changes to this bill, Delegate Guyton and everyone, that are amendments to the bill. In no way did I want to create a permanent virtual school. That was never the intent of the work group that the speaker developed to study this issue for several months. And so we came up with a lot of recommendations, and some of them are in here and some of them are not. And there's new things in here that we did not approve, that I did not approve. So we are working our way. We have worked our way to get through them and take some of those pieces out, but also make some additional changes too. So, I would just ask that we stick to the sections as we go through them. And if you have an issue with the section, we can make some changes there. And that will be beneficial. And if you did, I know you did send that email, Delegate Guyton, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes ago, and I'll take a look at it later. Again, we aren't moving the bill today. I understand everyone has some concerns, including our advocacy community. So, I know that's there, but Delegate Ebersol.
To clarify, we're talking about whether to include and who to include. This Flip the Classroom program would be voluntary still, just like virtual schools. So any students, parents who didn't feel that they were able to do this would probably not volunteer them to be part of the Flip the Classroom program, particularly, as Delegate Guyton points out, those with conditions that would make it difficult for them. So I believe the bill's written that no one's forced into this program because of what school they happen to attend or where they happen to be. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
And that is correct. Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
All right, so to that point, so my reading of the reprint though is that teachers are opting in. I don't see that kids have the choice though. So if a teacher is chosen to be part of the pilot program, the kids have to be part of it.
That's true. It's
That's
written.
true.
That's how it's written?
Mhm.
That's how it's written.
So if I'm teaching fourth graders and I decide I want to be in this program, then all the students that I'm teaching automatically come into the program?
As
Okay, well, yeah, that is problematic then. Thanks, Delegate Carr.
Yeah, it's written, yes. All right, Delegate, do you have another question or you just have your hand up?
I'm sorry, Delegate Ebersol, how would that work without having the students all participate? Because this is a homework assignment that they're gonna have to do and it's gonna have to be part of the class discussion. So I don't understand. Are you just suggesting that they be allowed to be assigned to a different class?
Well, I guess I was conflating two things here. We have virtual schools where apparently students are going to be, they can volunteer. They're going to be almost like charter schools where kids apply to get into them and then they're part of them. I thought part of that program would be this pilot where so this would be a Flip the Classroom that would be in a regular school. So it wouldn't be a disaggregated group of students that came into this program. It would be an aggregate group from a certain class.
Yeah, it
Right.
would just be like a certain like fourth period history or something would be
Right.
done this way. And I don't think the intent is that, and we can get a little bit more specific into uh, providing for how this program will be administered exactly, but I don't think it's going to be that every single lecture is done at home.
Right.
You have to watch, and every single class is a discussion. I think it's just occasionally that'll be done, and the goal is to see there's some evidence that that might result in better educational outcomes, and I think we want to test and see if that is in fact the case.
I just want to remind folks of the program here, right? So it's teacher records the program, records the lecture or the class. The students watch it at home. They come back and they have more of a discussion in the classroom. So they're still in the classroom time. We're not this program does not remove classroom time.
This is not the full-on virtual school.
This is not full-on virtual school.
And
This-
enough schools have enough kids. Maybe we could put some language in that every effort will be made by administration for parents who objected to their kids being part of this program. Most elementary schools have 3 or 4 fourth grade classes, or several Algebra 1 classes if we're talking secondary, and they could rework. They're capable. It's not easy, but they're capable of reworking their schedule.
And just remember, this is just them recording a class,
Right,
and having
right.
them watch it at home.
Right.
And on their own time and as slow as they like, and on their time, and then being able to come back to the classroom and discuss
So it's
that.
more augmentation of a lesson rather than a standalone lesson.
Correct.
Okay, that's relevant. Thank you.
And
Just
in
wanna make
fact,
that clear.
the goal is to increase, it's sort of the opposite of what's happened in virtual education where there's a lot of isolation. The goal is to increase interactions in the classroom and with the teacher and among the students. And there's, I think, a lot of evidence that a lot of learning happens in peer-to-peer interaction. So I think the goal is to increase that.
Thanks. Cool. Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Great. So a question for Delegate Eversole, given your new understanding of what the program is, do you still
Thank you for that, Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
do you still think that it should apply for elementary school age? I mean, given the example you said about special education, or do we maybe just limit the pilot to upper grades?
I can see the discussion for it, but I actually think, anecdotally, my office mate has a kindergartner. I have a grandchild kindergartner. My grandchild kindergartner is doing terrible with online learning right now. His is doing great. So I think, even, this might have, if it was somewhat selective, and that's what I was thinking we should add in, that, if a teacher chooses it, it doesn't automatically put a kid in the situation. Using this, I think now it sounds like extra stuff for them. There's a better word than stuff, and I'll think of it in a minute. Extra material for them to access. I think it could apply to an elementary. I think in elementary, there are elementary school kids who could do it. So I'm not. I'll accept the argument, but I don't think it. I'm not absolutely convinced. Let's say that.
And let me make it clear. Like the school system can determine because it's a pilot program. MSD will create it, but they can also. But the local school system can also put parameters around it too. To include just high schoolers or just a certain class or whatever have you. But Delia, so did you get to your point whether or not you feel, just to make it clear, you feel like you can still do it at elementary school level?
Right. And I have, I'm aware now because I have a phone next to me that somebody from MSCA would like to weigh in whenever you get a chance, Mr. Chair.
Fair enough. You can just raise your hand if you like, actually.
I'm their mouthpiece.
I mean, I actually would like to hear from the advocates, I think, on that point about.
Yeah, definitely. Let me.
We have a full party of them here. We have Sean Johnson. We have Paku.
All right, guys. Delegate. So let me.
Yes, I'm sorry.
All right. Thanks. Delegate Guyton.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that explanation, and that helped me a lot. I just want to say, I think understanding that this is separate from the virtual school concept, that was something that I hadn't wrapped my head around before. So I actually am not opposed to this concept for younger kids. It's the general virtual school that is most of a concern to me. So I withdraw my opposition to that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dove with a quick comment.
Good morning. So the quick comment is this is actually a whole entire instructional model, right? Like it has very specific It's based on very specific components of the science of learning, of pedagogy and practice, et cetera. And how it would be developed would look very different in a primary versus a secondary space because of the self-learning modules, like the student-centered and student-driven model parts of it, the parental engagement and involvement components that would need to be necessary. I mean, this is like a whole entire package of things, and it has some very formal components that need to be a part of it. And so if you did this, like, it would look different for primary, it would look very different for secondary because of how you would operate the student-driven model. That's one. Two, I think it's important to note that the research base on this is still very, very young. Flipped classrooms really didn't become a thing that we were starting to look at until around 2011, 2012. So that was kind of when it was beginning to be piloted in other places across the country. And so the research base and any data on the efficacy of this type of instructional program is still very young. So if you're going to do this, it's with all due respect, it's not just the teacher films their lecture and we kind of, it's really not quite that simple. And how it would be implemented in different modalities for students with special needs, for students who are English language learners, et cetera, it's going to look very different. So I just say that to say that we want to put some, you might want to kind of look at what the formal model looks like and think through how you want to implement that, and then incorporate all parts of research-based data analysis and whatnot. Happy to assist in that if you need it.
I look forward to your amendment, Ms. Dove. Thank you. We appreciate it. If you have some language for us, that would be great to add in here. Appreciate your comments. Well said. Well said. All right, let's move on to any other questions on this section. If everyone could put their hands down, that has their hand up. Ms. Delegate Guyton, Ms. Dove, just so I know who has to answer a question. Let's move on to the next section. If no one has any other questions on this section, it looks like we need to beef up some of the parameters around it, and possibly, provide some guidance on it. And Ms. Dove will get us something on that. So, Alice, let's go to the next section.
Okay, great. So the next section is on page 7 of the reprint. And this involves the requiring that a universal learning management system be adopted by the State Department of Education this year. I think we intended to change this to the fall, but I inadvertently left it as is in this reprint. But this is, according to testimony that MSDE gave to our committee, already something that they are doing or have done. So we don't think that that would necessarily be too strict. Once the universal learning management system is up online, and this is something like, I guess, a little bit more sophisticated than Blackboard, but it's like one from when I was enrolled in education the last time, one system that you can receive documents on, that you can communicate through, that students can collaborate, you can meet with your teachers, you can distribute curricula and things like that. During virtual learning, every school has had to have one or multiple ones. And so we'd like to ensure that there is one learning management system that is used throughout the state. Beginning next year, each county board shall designate at least one employee to be an expert in using the system, and the department shall make the curricular standards required under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Bill available through the curriculum, through the learning management system, so that each school system will have access to it. And that's this section.
Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to be clear, Alistair, I want to make sure I understand. You're saying that it is in fact, this date here in the reprint is correct, July 1st, 21?
No, I don't think that's correct. I think it should say it should say something like September 1st, 2021.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So that was my note, like I'm not sure for all the things that our teachers are doing and Herculean efforts, right? All the way around. I'm not sure if a few months is going to cut it. Could I bring up for discussion that maybe this is by the end of 21, like by the end of December, just giving folks more time or?
So this requirement is actually for the State Department of Education, not for schools or teachers, although that does come into play in the following year. But for the State Department of Education, according to their testimony, they have already developed this or are in the process of developing it. So I don't know that it's, I think it's a requirement that may already be met, but one that we are hoping that they will meet soon.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that because I'd hate to put folks in a bad place when schools are, everybody's coming back in the fall and everything's happening. So I just want to raise that. Thank you.
I can double check with them to make sure that that's accurate.
Thank you, Alistair.
Got it. Anybody else have any questions? Alice, you want to remind us what page you're on?
Yeah, that was on page 7 of the reprint.
Got it. Cool. Okay.
Moving forward to page 8, and now we get into the established. So those are a couple of kind of lessons learned from virtual education that we're hoping can potentially improve the way education is done in the state. On page 8, we're now getting into the bulk of how we're going to regulate the creation of temporary virtual schools and how we're going to regulate the current virtual school system that is set up in the state. And I should just note to everyone, current law allows counties or the state department, county boards or the State Department of Education to create virtual schools. It's very unregulated as it currently exists. Basically, they have carte blanche to do it. And so in this bill, in addition to putting guardrails on how temporary virtual schools should operate and how they should be created, there is, for the first time since that, I shouldn't say that, but the first time that I'm aware of, which, my knowledge is not so deep, we're trying to put some guardrails on the creation of virtual schools. So for those concerned that we're creating virtual schools, in fact, if this bill does not pass, or if some similar legislation does not pass, virtual schools can be created with very few guardrails and with very little say from the General Assembly. So sorry, just as a prelude before we get into the details here.
Yeah, and that I just want to make that very clear. That's correct. If we don't pass any version of this bill, virtual schools can be created at the state level and at the county level. So with any parameters they want to put on them. And we're trying to figure out how we can manage that process a little more and place more restrictions. Delegate Ebersole, you have a question or comment?
Well, no, I was just going to say, so summarizing, this bill is necessary both to enable some virtual schooling, but also to put some important guardrails on it at the same time. Is that what is that what I want to make sure I had that right?
Yeah, thanks for repeating what we just said. I appreciate that.
Well, it was for me, not for all of you.
Well,
Okay.
I needed it too. I needed it too.
There she is. She's got my back. She can stay in the legislature. I promise you. I want her out.
All right, Alistair, let's go through this section.
Yes. So so the first part, still on page 8 of the reprint, we begin to lay out the parameters in which temporary virtual school can be created. There has to be a sustained emergency as declared by the governor or the governing body of a county that prevents normal attendance at a public school over several school days. Then, if that happens, a county board may elect to transition a public school to virtual education. In doing so, the county board must submit first consult with the school administration and teachers, and then establish a temporary virtual education plan, which will lay out how the school is to operate during the temporary virtual education period. The plan must have attention paid throughout all aspects to equity to ensure that all students in the school are engaged in virtual education and continue to receive thorough and free education. There must be an accurate method to measure attendance. There must be a process to provide a free and appropriate public education to a student with a disability who is enrolled in virtual education. There must be a method to measure learning loss during the course of virtual education that includes benchmarks at the initiation and completion of the education, but does not significantly interrupt instruction. Instructional procedures must be designed to guarantee student engagement, including active participation, verified presence during the entirety of class time, and if appropriate, activated student cameras. There must be proper assignments for all school personnel that, to the extent practicable, reasonably balance workloads so no one is overloaded and everyone is utilized. And plans must be in place for student engagement and communication with parents. And additionally, at the start of the plan, although this obviously is not going to be able to be done perfectly, there must be a process to transition from temporary virtual school back into normal school attendance. So a county board must, so sorry, maybe I should stop there. Are there any questions?
Have you get down to number 5 on the?
No, not yet. Sorry, I'll continue to number 5. So the county board, after making that plan, submits it to the state board. Within 10 days, the state board has to accept or return with modifications. And then the county board must accept those modifications. And then the plan will be published on the county board's website. Sorry.
There we go. All right, cool. Any questions on this section? This is doing a temporary education plan. Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's here looks good. One thought, do we need to mention anything about food distribution that the school needs to include that as part of their plan in terms of how they're going to address?
Great question. We have an answer for that.
So,
Alistair.
yeah, I think it's mostly governed by federal law and we don't have too much ability to interact with it, but I can make sure to double check. And if we do, I think that might be a good thing to include here.
Yeah, this was also told to us by different educational experts here in the General Assembly too, that's where we got that from, that the federal government governs how kids are being fed. So something that we probably shouldn't get into, but we'll triple check on that for you, Polakovich-Carr. Was that everybody else's question?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, cool.
It was, as well as how far children have to walk to get that food, which was a serious concern in my community, where the children who needed the food had to walk the farthest to receive it. So I'd like to just put that out there as well.
Delegate Ebersol.
There's probably nothing we can do about that, as you say, but some counties actually came up with mobile food delivery units, and that would be something we could advocate for from our positions, I think. I will say too, I'm really pleased to see the piece about balancing teachers' responsibilities. It has gone very poorly in the run up here. Some teachers are at school and covering other people's classes, and some are at home, and feeling guilty.
I'm glad you feel that way, Delegate Ebersol. Thank you, Phil.
I'm on fire today. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Nah, you're good, man. Sean Johnson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. I just had a question in this section. You note consultation with school administrators and teachers, and there are other school employees impacted during virtual school adjustments, whether it's cafeteria workers, as Delegate Polakovich-Carr mentioned, or bus drivers or clerical staff who would not be included in the definition around administrators and teachers, and just don't want to make sure that we're not creating a circumstance where several employees in a school are without assignments, without consideration, without pay in this type of adjustment. Thank you.
Okay, that's a great point. It's a great point. Okay, delegate with the last question, Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think along the same lines, I think there need to be some provisions in this bill for when we have emergency situations, that there are some things that can't be adequately provided virtually that are by federal law required to be in person. One of those is transition services that involve community inclusion. So we need to make some specification for those things. And some of the special education activities like speech and OT, there are some things that you cannot provide virtually, and we need to require that there be a plan for providing those outside the virtual environment. That's my suggestion. We can certainly discuss it later.
Okay. I don't think we're on that section yet, but okay. Well, I think we'll get there, Delegate Guyton. But let me pause here, and let's take up a quick bill that we were going to take up earlier because I think we have a quorum here, or a good amount of folks here. Let's take up Delegate Ebersol's bill, if I can find it on my desk here. House Bill 753. Alice, you want to tell us what this bill does?
Yes, so this bill, we talked about this bill earlier in session. This bill governs how student-led protests can happen in school. It provides, requires that, prohibits their schools clamping down on them and sets some guidelines for how they work. Delegate Hornberger had some issues with it, but I think he worked with Delegate Ebersol and with the chair to come up with some amendments. So we have distributed those amendments right before this meeting. They would just clarify that the limitations on student protest in the bill, a student organized peaceful demonstration was defined as one that could create a clear and present danger or incite a student to commit an unlawful or dangerous act. I think there was some feeling that that's kind of a vague standard, and it's difficult to know whether something could incite someone to commit a dangerous act. So that was struck. And additionally, there was a limitation that a student protest could not occur. The school could limit a student protest from occurring if they didn't have at least 48 hours of advance notice. I think there's a thought that if there was, say, a school shooting the day before and they want to protest the next day, that might not be enough time. So instead of 48 hours, it was defined as a reasonable period of time in advance. So with those two amendments, I think, I unfortunately, Delegate Hornberger is not with us today, but I think that would hopefully satiate his concern that we're strictly adhering to First Amendment principles in this bill. But that was it, I think.
Great. Any questions on the amendments? Any questions on the bill? Okay, Delegate Ebersol, you have to hear a motion on the bill?
I move the amendments.
Yeah, on the amendments, yeah.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 All opposed to the amendments.
I have a question.
Okay, well, the amendments pass, so we'll go to the bill now. And can I ask for a motion on the bill first, and then we can take questions, Delegate?
Move favorable, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Second.
Second.
it's been properly moved and seconded. Questions, Delegate Rose?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, we're using Wayne's phone. I didn't have the Zoom link. So I know Kevin isn't here this morning, and for myself personally, I'm going to vote no until I have a chance to talk with Kevin, because I'd like to get his on that amendment and talk with him about it. So for now, that's just what I feel uncomfortable moving it because he had the concern without talking to him.
So we did, Delegate Rose, we did get a formal letter from the Attorney General's office that pretty much said that it was okay to do this and to move forward with the bill. They didn't bring up any concerns. I haven't talked to the delegate either about his concerns, but they did say that it was okay. I did read it myself and said everything was fine. But I mean, vote how you want to vote. Delegate Ebersol.
Yeah, we had extensive conversations, and the student, Jonathan DiPietro, who was instrumental in getting us started on this, talked to Delegate Hornberger at length also. And he says that what this looks like pretty much what they discussed also. The Attorney General was pretty nonplussed by the bill, didn't really feel too concerned. They did mention the 48 hours. and we've taken that out. I don't think there was much more that concerned them except for the business of the fact that we had the manner of expression, but Alistair can address that I think in some detail. If you want to, Mr. Chair, maybe you're just ready to move on.
We can, Alistair, if you can respond to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think there was a so the Attorney General's office, Delegate Eversol, they noted the 48-hour piece might be difficult, and they noted that the
Setting the public and,
Hey, Delegate.
sorry.
Can you mute? Thank you.
Sorry. They also noted that the definition of what a student organized peaceful demonstration does not include the incitement to commit an unlawful or dangerous act might be overly broad. So those two pieces were removed, but those are the only two pieces. And they didn't really say that those were necessarily problematic, but they were just the two pieces that which there might be issue with. There was a suggested amendment from not the Attorney General's office, but someone else that time, place, and manner, the manner of expression should be removed. The standard by which intermediate scrutiny is held is called, like, in short, the time, place, and manner regulations. So I don't think I think allowing manner of expression to be regulated is completely fine under the First Amendment and its jurisprudence. So I don't think that's really an issue, and I don't think that needs to be removed to adhere to constitutional norms.
Got it. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 2. Delegate Hartman and Delegate Rose. Awesome. Okay, bill passes. House Bill 753 passes. Thank you, everyone. Next bill we'll have, next bill. We'll go back briefly. Actually, let's conclude our meeting now to give everybody a chance to get ready for our voting session. And we'll come back on Sunday. No, I'm joking. We'll come back. We might meet on Monday to discuss it, and Tuesday too. Delegate, well, let me conclude the meeting, Delegate, if you don't mind, and then we can take questions after that for everyone. Okay. So that's